Once there were Europeans who wanted to make Europe Judenrein, the German word for Jew-free. But that wasn't good enough. Even after 6 million European Jews were brutally murdered and millions of others ran away from Europe, leaving Western and Eastern Europe very much Jew-free, now the official leaders of Europe financially support making our own ancestral homeland of Judea and Samaria Judenrein, Jew-free, as well. An anti-Israel NGO here in Israel called Molad just published a position paper titled Nonviolent Civil Evacuation, Rethinking the End of the Settlement and Enterprise. And guess who funded the research and publication of this paper? The European Union. As it says right here on the bottom of page 4 in English, co-funded by the European Union. This is a research position paper, not about advancing peace or coexistence. No, it's a European Union funded paper on how to destroy the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria and expel Jews from their homes and their ancestral homelands without using violence, of course. Well, how nice of the European Union. Now, why in the world would the European Union be funding something like this? Stick with me as we dig deeper. So, back to the European Union sponsored paper, strategizing to expel Jews living in Judea and Samaria from their homes. Interestingly, this position paper, just recently published in October 2021, can only be found in Hebrew on the Hebrew website as of now. It does not yet appear on the list of papers on the English website. Don't know if that means anything, I'm just pointing that out. Now, the position paper's introduction states clearly as follows. Quote, the claim that the division of the country into two states on the basis of the 1967 lines is no longer possible due to the expansion of the settlements has been heard more and more frequently in recent years. According to this claim, the number of settlers in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, has long since crossed the point of no return, and therefore the possibility of evacuating the settlers from their homes, as was done in Sinai and the Gaza Strip, has been dropped. That's good news, right? And they continue. In addition to the claim of the irreversibility of the situation on the ground, critics of the two-state solution also point to changes in the IDF's demographic composition, the establishment of the power of the settlers in state institutions, the enormous cost of their resettlement in Israel, and the conflict. All of these reasons, they argue, leave no choice but to abandon the idea of dividing the land and consider alternative solutions to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It follows that the accepted narrative in Israel regarding the need to evacuate masses of settlers by force is nothing but a myth, the preservation of which serves only the settlement movement itself. In practice, most relevant settlements can be dismantled by administrative means, such as changing the state's budgetary priorities, meaning defunding, abolishing the legal system that supports the settlements, preparing in advance for compensation and resettlement within Israel, and reducing civilian infrastructure. Basically, their plan is that for the European Union, they support the non-lethal method of expelling Jews by drying us all up and leaving us all alone without the proper infrastructure or funding in order to live here in Judea and Samaria, so that us Jews living in these communities in Judea and Samaria live on our own accord. From this, we can clearly see that the European Union most probably plans on pressuring consecutive Israeli governments to make the changes necessary to make life so miserable for Jews living in Judea and Samaria that we would then beg our government to resettle us in other places in the state of Israel. So, this makes perfect sense as a realistic European Union policy direction, because at the same time the European Union is funding the creation of a de facto state of Palestine, even though against international law and their own signatories on the Oslo Accords. Investigative journalist Edwin Black, who wrote the seminal book IBM and the Holocaust, has been researching the European Union's illegal funding given to the Palestinian Authority to steal Jewish land in Judea and Samaria. He found out and documented that the EU has for years been funding billions of euros for illegal building and infrastructure work by the Palestinian Authority throughout Area C of Judea and Samaria. What Edwin Black uncovers is truly mind-blowing, And this is all European tax money, European hardworking Europeans. So with one hand, the European Union spends money on anti-Israel organizations preparing the policy papers to expel Jews from their homes in Judea and Samaria without violence, thank you. And with the other hand, the European Union spends money on stealing Jewish land in Judea and Samaria to fund the building up of homes and infrastructure for the Palestinian Authority to create a de facto state of Palestine. Now, I ask you, why should hardworking Europeans have their hard-earned taxpayer money spent on expelling Jews from their homes and stealing Jewish land in our ancestral homeland? That's not fair to the European taxpayers. And that's a question everyone should be asking, because it exposes the horrific European leadership's Jew-hating agenda just in a new form, not doing anything for the Europeans whose tax money is going towards this anti-Jewish agenda. And on top of all that, to further highlight the anti-Jewish agenda of the European Union, when former President Trump announced a historic economic agreement between two enemy countries in Europe, Christian Serbia and Muslim Kosovo, that included both agreeing to open up official offices in Jerusalem, hence recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, well, the European Union threatened both Serbia and Kosovo with repercussions. Why? Because those countries agreed to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, which is against European Union policy. Hence, they threatened them with sanctions and whatnot. The clear anti-Jewish agenda of many of Europe's leaders today has never gone away. It has just adapted to a new era. The irony is, back in the 1940s, Europeans who wanted to make Europe Judenrein, Jew-free, they used to tell the Jews, Jews, go back to Palestine. Now that we are in our ancestral homeland and out of Europe, what do they say? Jews, leave Palestine. Will they make up their mind? Well, we realize it has nothing to do with the Jews and everything to do with their own anti-Jewish agenda. But here is the positive side of the story, folks, because you know I always give you the positive. While the European Union continues to pursue their blatant Jew-hating agenda, we will continue to enjoy resettling our ancestral and eternal homeland. The European Union can ignore the truth all they want, but Jews have been living in Judea and Samaria continuously for over 3,000 years, with only a 19-year window of not living here between the years of 1948 and 1967, when the world allowed Jordan to illegally occupy our land and expel us and make the land Judenrein. But we are back, and we are home. And no matter how much European taxpayer money the European Union wastes on trying to expel us from our homes, even non-violently, well, we proud Jews back home are not going anywhere. Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people are alive and well, back in the place where we are supposed to be, our ancestral and eternal homeland, the land of Israel, including our ancestral lands of Judea and Samaria.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.
So this position paper, titled Nonviolent Civil Evacuation, Rethinking the End of the Settlement Enterprise, was put out by an anti-Israel, Israel-based NGO called Molad. Whenever I want to find out information about anti-Israel NGOs, I visit the NGO Monitor website. NGO Monitor is a fabulous research institute focused on fact-based research and independent analysis about non-governmental organizations, NGOs, their funders and their stakeholders, primarily in the context of the Arab-Israeli conflict. They are the #1 source for deep dive information on any or all the NGOs that work actively against Israel. So, NGO Monitor notes that according to the organization Molad themselves, they are, quote, an independent, nonpartisan research institute and think tank dedicated to the fundamental political and social issues of Israeli life, composed of experts, policymakers, and activists who aim to inject quality content into the Israeli public discourse by developing a comprehensive vision for the state of Israel that is equitable and in tandem seeks peaceful integration of Israel into its geopolitical environment. However, what Molad chooses to ignore in writing is that it is a blatant anti-Israel organization focused on destroying the Jewish character of the state of Israel. If we just look at some of the recent position papers put out by this NGO, well, here's one. Israel's security in a two-state reality. Well, they clearly want to divide Israel and create a terror state on our ancestral homeland. Another one. Religious indoctrination's great failure. Again, they believe that Israelis are being religiously indoctrinated. Hello, we are Jews. Another one. Trump's peace plan is immoral, impractical, and could blow up the Middle East. Well, they go far as to call out Trump's plan as immoral, even though it was the most reality-based plan ever presented to allow for true coexistence and to develop a people-to-people peace on the ground with a massive amount of economic investment. And that they call immoral? Another one. Netanyahu keeps winning because his opponents lack a vision for Israel. Well, there you go, a strategy for the left to finally beat Netanyahu and the right. And finally, for now, another example, Israelis are not all right-wing, but our leftist parties have lost faith in themselves. They clearly are a left-wing outfit, our leftist parties, aimed at weakening the Jewish right population in Israel. And then you have one of their past leaders who straight out called for a one-state solution. So honestly, I have no problem with a left-wing NGO. I have a problem with them presenting themselves as nonpartisan, basically lying about their true agenda. In any case, NGO Monitor records that Molad has received funding from the New Israel Fund, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and Soros Open Society, all charitable outfits that want to destroy the Jewish character of the State of Israel. Yes, that exactly is what the New Israel Fund is about as well. It's not about a new Israel fund, it's about creating a new Israel, right? A fund to create a new Israel. So now with this position paper, we see that the European Union is also supporting Molad and their anti-Israel agenda.